We are on the Beis Amud Beis today. So let's just get started up from we're learning two things, two halachas here. We have a Mishnah that told us that there's a chiyuv, prisha, the Kohen Gadol has to be perished from his home for 7 days to the Lishkas Parhedrin. And when the Kohen was served to Para, before he made the Paraduma, he also had to be perished 7 days to the Lishkas Beis HaEvan. So Gemara asks, where do we get this idea from? And we learned it from the Miluim. When the Kahanim had to prepare for the Hakamas HaMishkan, so they had to stay in the base in the Mishkan, they had to stay around there for 7 days, and they couldn't leave. And we learned that from the Joshua is Lases and Lechaper. So these words Lases is coming to teach us that the same thing applies to the Paraduma, and Lechaper, the same thing applies for Yom Kippur. So Gemara says maybe the whole pasuk is talking about Yom Kippur. So Gemara says, yeah, we have a Gzera Shavat Tziva to tell us that Tziva from Paraduma to the Miluim, that it applies to Paraduma as well. That's what we ended off with yesterday. So Ma lahalan para av kan para and ma kan prisha av lahalan prisha. Let's go to Beis Amud Beis. The Gemara asks a kasha. The Ema. So again, so that was telling me why I have to include para aduma in the drasha, because I have this Gzera Shava to tell me that, and therefore Lasis will tell me that para aduma is included and Yom Kippur. So there's the Gemara the Ema tziva Yom Kippur, and I'll tell you, do we have a Gzera Shava tziva for Yom Kippur too? So I can tell you the whole thing's talking about Yom Kippur. Dichsev. Vayas kasher tziva Hashem as Moshe. Vayas, and he'll do kasher tziva Hashem as Moshe, like Hashem commanded Moshe. So you have, that's talking about Yom Kippur. So I also have a tziva by Yom Kippur. So the same way I have a gzera shava tziva for Paraduma, I have a tziva for Yom Kippur. So I could still say the whole thing is talking about Yom Kippur and leave out Paraduma. Says the Gemara. Well, look at the order of things here. By the Miluim, it says kasher asa bayim hazeh tziva Hashem lasos. So the lasos comes after the tziva, and in the pasuk here by paraduma, and all the same thing applied. The same was true by paraduma. It says tziva. It says Sukkos asher tziva Hashem leimer. Doesn't even say lasos. So there that's what we like. So Gemara says like this: done in tziva delifnei asiya, mitziva delifnei asiya. Okay, we're taking more into context when we're making this Gzera Shava. So we're only going to judge the word tziva that precedes asiya from another scenario where tziva precedes asiya. The ain done in tziva de la'achar asiya, which is what you have by Yom Kippur. It's vayas first and then tziva. And we're not going to learn that from a scenario where you have a tziva that's lifnei asiya. So since by miluim the word tziva precedes asiya, and by Yom Kippur the word tziva comes after asiya, we're not going to make such a Gzera Shava. Okay, we have a better place to learn it from. Well, what about the fact that it says tziva by karbanas? And okay, so what do you want to do? You want to learn a Gzera Shava from the miluim to karbanas. Take a look at the top Rashi. Lahatzrach kol koyin ha'oived b'mikdash prisha lekarbanas tzibur. Anytime there's karbanas tzibur, which is every day, there's a karban tzibur, a karban tamar was brought every day. So the kohen that's going to do that avodah is going to have to be pirish for 7 days before he does that avodah. Okay, how are we going to do that? The ema tziva de karbanas. The pasuk says, "B'yayim tzavaisei as b'nei Yisrael." On the day that he commands the Bnei Yisrael. So again, we have by Karbanas Tzibur the word Tziva, and we have by the Miluim Tziva. So the same way you need by Miluim, you need Prisha. So for every Karban Tzibur, you should need Prisha. Where it says, listen to this one. Done in Tziva Mitziva, we're going to be very specific here. We want the same exact word. So by the Miluim, it says the kasher tziva Hashem lasis. By paraduma it says Asher Tziva Hashem. By karbonis it doesn't say tziva, it says savoisai. Be'en savoisai ben Yisrael done in tziva mitziva ain't done in savasai mitziva. Okay. Mar says, is that really? Are you serious about that? Is that really true? We don't make Gezer Shavas unless it's exactly the same word? Listen to this Gezer Shava. What difference does it make if it's the same word or not? Vahatana, debate Rabbi Shmuel. The Tana in Beis Medrash Rabbi Shmuel, they learned the following Gezer Shava. Okay? Not only is it not the same word, not only it's different words, but it means the same thing. And that was enough to make Gzer Shava. This is talking about by Negayim, when the Kohen went to visit a guy's house. The guy had a nega on his wall, so he had to show it to the Kohen. So it says the first time, Vishav HaKohen, the Kohen returns, and then a different time it says, Uba HaKohen. And in the Beis Medrash Rabbi Shmuel, they made the following drasha. Zuhi Shiva, Zuhi Bia. It's the same thing. Even though it's different words, since it has the same meaning, it means he came back to the house. So I'm able to make a Gzer Shava and learn halachas from those two scenarios. There it's referring specifically to the halacha when you have a nega on your house. So they close off the house first. First you got to wave it, then they come back and look at it, then look at it again. The halacha is the third time that happens, they destroy the whole house. But the first two times.
So when I lay next year, I can take a shove and a book.
Exactly. You can't. They're different words, but they mean the same thing. So the nakuda is that. So the darshan's there that you can that in the Gzer Shava teaches us that you don't have to destroy the house. You could just do what you did the first time, which is take off the paint and remove some stones. That's what the halacha there is telling you. But it's a Gzer Shava. So you see, Gzer Shava is not tied to the words. Meaning's enough. Mashmais is enough. So how could you tell me here that Tziva and Savasai, no, we don't make such a Gzer Shava? That's the worst question. Mark gives a very fair answer. Hani mili, when do we say the Gzer Shava can be in Mashmayas? Heicha deleka de damile. You got nothing better. There's nothing more similar to it. Okay, so if you don't have words that are so similar, so the Gzer Shava could be things that have the same meaning. Aval heicha deika de damile. But in a scenario where you could make a Gzer Shava to the exact word, or to Gzer Shava to something which is not the exact, so heicha deika de damile, where you have a similar case. And we prefer to learn from where it's more exact to something which is less exact. And therefore, we will make the Gzer Shava to para, to tell me that para is included in the pasuk of Lases. And there will be a prisha. Let's go back to what the kasha was. Maybe why making the drasha to para and to Yom Kippur, maybe only let's make it just Yom Kippur, which has kapara. So Mar says, now we have a Gzer Shava of Tziva to tell me that paraduma is included. So now we have a source for both paraduma and fresh of Kohen Gadol before Yom Kippur from the Miluim. Okay, so far so good? Terrific. Zok the Gemara. The second part of the drasha that we made was lechaper. When the pasuk says lechaper, elu ma'isa Yom Kippur. This is referring to Yom Kippur. Okay, correct the Gemara. 1 second. Lechaper. You're telling me the only time we talk about kapara in the Torah is on Yom Kippur? That's ridiculous. Ve'ema kapara de karbanos. Maybe it's the kapara of karbanos. Now, we already mentioned this before. Now, this is a different point. Before we were talking about the tziva of karbanos. Ve'ema kapara de karbanos. This is talking about a carbon yachid, or also a carbon yachid. Meaning, not only do karbanos tzibur come for kapara, a karbanos yachid also comes for kapara. And in many times, Rashi says, it says v'chiper olav hakayin. The kain comes to do this as a kapara. So maybe we should learn that whenever you're being mafresh, whenever you're coming, whenever a kain has to bring a carbon even for an individual, he's got to be pirish for 7 days. Says the Gemara, Miyadinan hai kain misrami. Do we know which Kohen is going to be the one who's going to bring the carbon? The boile prisha that we're going to require him to do prisha? Says the Gemara. Amri, they answered, Alamalai, why not? What's the big deal? Ni boile prisha lekule mishmeres beis av. You know how it works? The Kohanim were divided into 24 families. Those are called mishmares. Each mishmar was divided into 7 batei av. And they worked each mishmar worked 1 day a week. So
you'll know what day he's working.
You'll know what day you're working. So that day requires 7 days of prisha before the day that you work. That's 2 days. That's 2 weeks off. All right, that's 4 weeks a year. Besides for Yantiv. Okay. So says the Gemara, why don't we do that? So it's not such an issue. You don't know which kind. So the whole base will be Parish. Says the Gemara like this. Danin davar shekavua loizman midavar shekavua loizman. The miluim had a set time. The prisha was done before Rosh Chodesh Nisan, so there was a set time for this. So if we're going to learn out prisha, we're going to learn something that has a set time from something that has a set time. La'afuke karbanos, as opposed to karbanos, the kol yoma isnu. Someone can bring a carbon any day. So that's not something that has a set time. Yom Kippur has a set time. What about Paraduma? I guess we're talking about Lechaper now. So on the Nakud of Lechaper, we're going to learn from Lechaper something which has a set time, like Yom Kippur, as opposed to everything else, a regular carbonates that come for Kapara that don't have a set time. Okay, 1 second. Are those the only carbonates that have a set time is Yom Kippur? In fact, the Gemara, the Ema Regalim, every Yantif. You have karbanas sibra that are brought lechapara for kapara. So why can't we should require the kahanim that are coming for that yantiv to be pirish? Says the Gemara, davenin davar shenayig pam achas b'shana. We're going to learn something which is nayig once a year. Midavar hanayig pam achas b'shana. Again, we're learning from the miluim. The miluim was a pam achas event. It was a one-time a year event.
It was a one-time lifetime event.
So that is also true. It was the only time it happened. I don't know, maybe there was other Chanukah Sabayis, but they were actually one day. Yeah, we're learning here.
Wasn't with Aaron.
Yeah. That was Rosh Chodesh Nisan. That was the day they were working for. So says the Gemara, done in Davar that's Nay Pamachas B'Shana La'afuke Regalim. The La Pamachas B'Shana. The Regalim are Shalosh Regalim. They're 3 times a year. So we're not going to learn to there. We're going to learn to Yom Kippur. Correct the Gemara. Okay. Ve'ema regal achad. All right. At least for one regal require prisha. Correct the Gemara. V'chitema le'adin and haminai. So you'll say, well, which regal should we choose? Like which yantav are you going to choose? Maybe Chag HaMatzos you should choose. Ha'elu Pesach b'yakas of Tchila. The Torah always begins with Pesach. So that's a chashiv as Pesach has. So maybe that's the one we should choose. Sukkos, or maybe we should choose Chag HaSukkos. It's got so many mitzvahs. It's got sukkah, lulav, esrog, hadasim, aravas, nisach hamayim. Okay, so we wouldn't know what you want to do. So when it says Ella, rather done prisha shivas yamim liyayim echad mi prisha shivas yamim liyayim echad. Ve'ain done in prisha shiva l'shiva mi prisha shiva liyayim echad. So here's another factor about the miluim. The miluim was 7 days of prisha for 1 day of work. So Pesach is knocked out because Pesach is 7 days. And Sukkos is knocked out because Sukkos is 7 days. But Yom Kippur is only 1 day. Okay.
Shavuos.
We'll get there. But before Shavuos, the Gemara has another kasha. Ve'ema Shmini. The Shmini Atzeres. Because that's perfect. That you'll have a prisha of Shiva Gliyam Echad. Alrighty, what are we going to do with that one? So listen to this one. Here we go. So that was Shmini. The Prisha, the Shiv Liyamachad. So the Gemara who done in, I'm sorry. Ve'ema Shmini, the Prisha Shiv Liyamachad who. It's a scenario where you're being perished 7 days for 1 day. So that would be a case, the Gemara is saying, that it's a Kohen, who's a Kohanim that can be working on Shmini Atzeres, they should be perished the whole Sukkos. Says the Gemara, done in davar she'ein kedusha lefanav, mi davar she'ein kedusha lefanav. You see, the shivas me'amaluim were not kodesh days. So we as opposed to
Days before
Shemini
Shemini
Atzeres, the days before Shemini Atzeres are Kodesh. So therefore, we're going to don. If we had to choose something, we would choose like Yom Kippur that has 7 days before it that are not Kodesh, right? And biblically, we have Rosh Hashanah as a day, and then you have another 9 days till Yom Kippur. The 7 of those days are not Kodesh, and they're going to lead up to Yom Kippur. So done in Ve'ema Shmini Deprecious Shivli Mechadu. So Mar says done in Davar She'en Kedush Lefanav Midavar She'en Kedush Lefanav. The ain done in Davar She'esh Kedush Lefanav Midavar She'en Kedush Lefanav. Now you may be wondering, 1 second, isn't Shabbos Kodesh? Shabbos is Kodesh. So of course the Miluim had Kedusha Lefanav. There were 7 days. 7 days has to have a Shabbos in it. So what happened to Shabbos? The bottom thesis. Last one on the page, last line. Done in Davar She'en Kedush Lefanav. Avagav the Shabbos Lefanavu. What about Shabbos? Shabbos comes before it, so why don't we count Shabbos? Lekachashiv. We don't count it. What? Elekachashiv Yomtiv the Tali Bebezdin. The kedusha that Bezdin would be responsible for is what we're talking about here. Aval kedusha Shabbos kviya v'kaima. Shabbos is there always. The Edi yesh kedusha Shabbos levanav, and you're always going to have a kedusha Shabbos. It's going to come in 7 days. So I don't know if this is 2 separate svaras or this is 1 svara, but this is the Nakuda. When we talk about it, that has the Kedusha b'fanav, it has the Kedusha that's totally in Bezdin, as opposed to Shabbos, which is a Kedusha that's Kaddish Me'elov, that doesn't get counted into this Cheshbon. Right? So the peer or the
What is the Kedusha of Sukkos?
is created by Bezdin,
Sukkot.
because Bezdin is the one who's Mekadosh l'Chodesh. That's why we say in davening, Mekadosh Yisrael v'Hazmanim, which is translated as God is Mekadosh the Jews who are Mekadosh the times. As opposed to on Shabbos, we just say Mekadosh HaShabbos. Hashem makes Shabbos Kodesh. Says the Gemara. Okay, so again, what was this cheshbon here? We're going to learn the Kasha Wewa Shmi Atzeres. The Teretz is that the Miluim don't have days of Kedusha before it, as opposed to Shmi Atzeres has days of Kedusha of Sukkos before it, and therefore it's not a good, we don't want to learn like that. Now, the Gemara asks an interesting question here. Granted, I can't learn it from this, I can't learn it from Lachaper, but isn't it a Kal V'Chomer? Hashta davar she'ein kedusha lefanov. You have a day which has no kedusha before it, ba'i prisha, that needs prisha. Davar sheyesh kedusha lefanov like kol shekein. So if I have a day that is not only is it a holy day itself, but it has 7 days of kedusha leading up to it, or some days of kedusha leading up to it, shouldn't that even call for more prisha? Interesting. That the days before the day affect the day in terms of the day itself.
The level of the day.
Yeah. That a day that's preceded by Kedusha has more Kedusha than a day that's not preceded by Kedusha. I thought that was an interesting Kal V'Chomer. So I'm Rav Misharshia, Loi. No, that's interesting. He doesn't disagree with the svara. He just says hazeksiv. The pasuk says kasher asa b'yem hazeh tziv Hashem la'asos l'chaper. Like Hashem said to do on this day. Hazeh ksiv kizeh. It's got to be like this day. Rashi says kazeh. Last line in Rashi. Loi hitzrich prisha. It's like this word is coming la'afuke v'gzer shava. I'm sorry, la'afuke v'kal v'chemer. It's saying no, only kazeh. The only time you need prisha is if you have a day that is kazeh, like this one, which means it's not preceded by anything that's not kodesh. Okay, Rav Ashi gives a different teretz. I think Rav Ashi Amar mi ika midi. The Iker Regal Loi Ba'i Prisha Tafel Day Ba'i Prisha. Is there something where the Iker Regel does not need Prisha, but that which is secondary to it does need Prisha? It says it doesn't make sense that Sukkos won't need Prisha, but Shemini Atzeres, which is Tafel, which is secondary to Sukkos, will need Prisha. He doesn't like that.
Isn't Shmini Atzeres its own Yom Kippur?
Oh, correct. Zak Taisis, Zak the Gemara, I'm sorry. And even according to the Manda Amar Shmini Regel B'fnei Atzmai, and even according to the opinion that says Regel, that Shmini Atzeres is its own Yantif. Hani Mili, this is in regards to Pizar Keshav. In Tashlumin, when it comes to Tashlumin of Karbanis, which is what we're dealing with over here, Tashlumin Dirishinu. It's a makeup for the first day. I wanted that we'll save for we're not going to meet tomorrow, but on Shabbos we'll talk about Pizar Keshav and Tashlumin. But that's the end of today's Amud. So we discussed here.
What's the premise of the question? Meaning, the whole idea of even asking the question to begin with is that Shmini Atzeres is its own entity, essentially.
Which question?
Meaning, when we 5-6 lines up, when we switch from Pesach and Sukkos, and we then get to why not Shmini Atzeres? The whole idea of posing Shmini Atzeres as a possibility is because it's in part it's its own chag, it's its own yontif. So now, at the end, when it's coming back, and even according to the Manda Amla, it says it's a regular weekly atzma. I'm saying, I don't even understand the Havamina. The whole reason you're even coming to ask the question is because we're already in the world of its own yontif.
Good kasha. I mean, why don't we ask the kasha from Shvi Shel Pesach, which also has Kedusha Zachag, right? Why didn't they ask from Shvi Shel Pesach? It only asks from Shmini Atzeres so far, right? So presumably we're assuming that it's a regel. It's got its own. That's your kasha, right?
I mean,
there's something unique about that.
Yeah.
Right? There's something unique about Shmini Shel Pesach that it is considered a yantif, which is correct. And the teretz of the Gemara is Rav Ashi's teretz is that you're right. It is a yantif of Ne'atzmai, but it's really only secondary to. It doesn't. It's not really its own yantif. That's really what it's saying. There's a connection between Sukkos and compared to Sukkos, it's a tuffle to it because it's a makeup day for if you missed your karbanis on Sukkos, you can make it up on Shmini Atzeres. So in terms of the karbanis world, in terms of the karbanis, which really we're talking about over here, the darshan from Lachaper, and talking about the karbanis, so it really is a secondary. But that's a good shmak. There's a machlokes here between the first teretz and the second teretz. But the first teretz was going not that way.
Meaning, even if you didn't have to make up karbanos, Shmini Atzeres is yantif. It's not like Shavuos, where Shavuos is for one day, and you have Tashlumin for a week after Shavuos. There's no yantif that happens in that week of Tashlumin where you can bring your korban that you're supposed to bring on Shavuos that you didn't bring it. Shmini Atzeres still stands no matter what.
But we're talking about making Tashlumin for.
Well, I'm saying Tashlumin for what? For Tashlumin for Sukkos?
Right. It's also not a regular. We'll see what it's a regular. It's a regular announcement for some things. The Maisi don't. There's no chiv el. I mean, it's not a regular. Right? It doesn't have the same thing. But there is an interesting. We have to figure out what is the machlekes between these two tirutzim. I mean, Rav Ashi is saying that it is tafel. It sounds like the first teretz holds that it's not tafel. Right. That's an interesting nakuda. Okay, gewaldig. Okay, on Friday we're not going to learn together, but we'll learn on Shabbos an hour before Mincha, which this week is at 6:30. If you can make it, fantastic. In addition, tonight is Pesach Sheni, so we an amazing. I say Pesach Sheni, yeah. So it's an amazing holiday. The people who were missing out, they were putter. You know what I mean? I was thinking about this today. You know, if I'm putter from something, you know what I mean? How fast am I asking to give me the opportunity to do it again? You know what I mean? I'll take the tour. Yeah, and he said, like a Yidden said, no, we don't want to take the. And they were doing good stuff. You know, why were they tamei l'nefesh adam? Right? They were burying people. You know, they were burying a meis mitzvah. They were doing good things. So they could have just sat back and said, you know, maspik, I'm good, I'm okay. But they came along and they said, lo manigara. Why should we lose that? They felt they didn't.
You just answered your own question. good people. That's what they're looking for. Sure.
Very good.
What's
Well
the
said.
word of the day?
Very
What's
good.
there-
It's to feel that. It's to work on that Indian of Lo Minigara. Why I should look at Avodas Hashem as an opportunity, not a burden. I guess that's like the Indian. These are opportunities I have. It's not so much not something I have to be Yosef Zayin. Right? That day, as Rav Soloveitchik said, he touched up an American Jew, someone who is parv and sheikh right? No obligation. I was Yosef Zayin, I'm finished. So this is the Yom Kippur Pesach Sheni is like Lo Minigara. I wanted to bring it on. You know what I mean? Bring it on. I'm happy to have it. And then what's amazing is that Kosh created an entire new Yom Tov, right? Which like you're into the Kabbalah of it. It's like that what happened on the first night of Pesach is happening again tonight. It's just like crazy, and like those all the whole Torah you got on. And he changed like the whole everything in the world, so these couple of Yidden could have a Geshmaka.
They'll be in the Megillah tonight too.
Oh, that's the second night. All righty, terrific. Thank you, gentlemen.
So I was going to remind people of Pesach Sheni. I was afraid you were going to make another meme for me.
Oh, Kishvan, that's a helpful one. Kishvan is important. I gotta go do it. I gotta do Kishvan.